Hello everyone, welcome to the RightVIEWS podcast. I am Prasanna Naidu,
And I'm Rahul Deodhar.
and today we will be talking about liberalization, privatization, globalization, etc. So basically, whatever happened in 1991, it's almost 30 years now. So that's why we thought of taking this topic. In 1991, there were major reforms with respect to our economy. So let's start with that, and also we'll continue later about what reforms we require now. So Rahul sir, first let's start with the basics. Like, what does this actually mean? Like privatization, liberalization, and globalization. And what's the difference between each?
Yeah, so basically liberalization, okay, let's step back a bit. So before 91, in fact, after foundation in 1947, we were, though in constitutional terms, we were not a socialist country. That socialist tag was added in 1975 by Indira Gandhi.
Yeah.
But Nehruvian
Policy.
philosophy of governance was socialistic. So the state would take up lots of industrial activity, industrial investments, and so on. Now, to a certain extent, it was required, but the state became powerful, and it started creating hurdles in terms for competition. So, for example, if you had acquired, and everything was manufactured under a license. So if you had acquired a license to manufacture two-wheelers, which was the case by Bajaj, so Bajaj would manufacture scooters, and no one else in the world would be allowed to sell scooters in India except at a duty which will sort of neutralize their advantage. So if you're producing, let's say, a scooter in Italy, and it costs like in rupees, it cost 5,000 rupees, and Bajaj factory, it costs 10,000 rupees, then they would impose a 5,000 rupee duty on, or maybe 15,000. No? It's like obscene duties on this Italian scooter, Vespa, which was a very good brand those days. So the imported goods would cost at least as much, if not more, than the domestically produced goods. So that was the premise. Now, this meant that imposing barriers, trade barriers. So liberalization means removing these trade barriers. So that is the principle of liberalization. So it's a free and fair trade for all the companies from different countries within your market. So it's an access to market. So your access to Indian market was made free, or it was liberalized. Privatization means basically, because of socialism, all the companies that government created, like people may not know, but there is some company called Maharashtra Scooters Limited, and they would manufacture some two-wheelers and all. So these kinds of companies would be sold off to private players who are good manufacturers of two-wheelers and three-wheelers and such so on.
So this was state-run company.
This was state run. Yeah, it's a government company. It's still there, I think, if it's not defaulted already. And then there are many such companies. Even today, you know that ONGC is a state-run company. HPCL, BPCL.
So all the PSUs, Navratnas, etc.
Yeah, Navratnas. But there are more than about 700 companies created by various governments in India, central and state. Now, some of them are essentially government businesses, like let's say defense manufacturing. So those were, I mean, we can outsource some part of it, but you cannot outsource all of it. So Hindustan Aeronautics would continue to remain a state entity. ISRO is definitely a state entity. Those kinds of things are essentially state, or something which is managing a dam, for example. Those will be state-run companies. But there are definitely other companies which are like cotton mills, khadi mills, this mill, that mills. All these are also state-run companies, which are not required. And these companies, including MTNL and BSNL and such others, they can be privatized. And that's the objective, that state should not be in the business of doing business. And that's what privatization refers to. And the third is basically globalization, which means so the first part, liberalization, is technically companies, but companies basically in India and anywhere else. But globalization refers to improved trade with the world. So the trade barriers would be reduced, and the trade barriers including for commodities. So it is not just companies, but also for commodities. So predominantly, what happens is
So what's the difference between liberalization and globalization?
so liberalization is basically all private companies within India can participate in different things without requiring a license. So you don't need a license for production of scooters. So I can set up a company and start producing bicycles. I don't need a license because I just need to follow the law. So I just need to have a manufacturing unit which is located in a manufacturing area.
Hmm.
I'm paying my electricity charges, I'm paying whatever the state charges, but no need for a license to produce. I can produce whatever I want. So, I mean, whatever legal stuff I want. So, I can't produce drugs, but I can produce anything which
Yeah, so basically removing the trade barriers.
yes, I mean, it's see, you have to understand that today we cannot understand, but for everything you had to apply for a license or a permission.
Hmm.
So, for example, when Infosys started, they wanted to import like I think 15 or 20 computers. So they had to go to the government
Hmm.
to get that import ratified, and then they could import those computers. Otherwise, you are not allowed to import the computers. So that process, let's say you go for with let's say today you go in for Apple iPhone, I don't know, 12. Okay, what is the latest iPhone? You go. I want iPhone 12, and you go. It will take 2 years. So by the time iPhone 12 is gone, 13 gone, 14 gone, 15, and then when world is moving to 15 and 16, you will get approval for 12. Okay. Now you will be approved, let's say, for $1,000 for iPhone 12. Now suppose in 2 3 years later, you can find that iPhone for $500.
Hmm.
And you, instead of importing one iPhone, you import two iPhones, because now you can afford in that $1,000 two iPhones, right?
Hmm.
Then they would have a question: how can you import two? How can you? What is the you have over invoiced, you have done this, pay duties at $1,000 per phone, even though the price is changed, and all this would drag on and drag on and drag on, and productivity would be lost. So Infosys, I think, had to wait for like 9 or 10 months before they got their permission to import computers. That was in, I think, 84 or 85, I think, somewhere around that time. So that is the kind of control state had. For example, you are traveling to, let's say, US, and you need dollars. You needed a permission from the Reserve Bank to carry dollars. And by chance, if you found some extra dollars, and you are found with some extra dollars, you would be put in jail. So all these things had, this is the process, was liberalization. Basically, we tend to we tend to group everything together, but liberalization is basically domestic companies accessing the market without need for license and permissions.
Okay, we got it. So basically, privatization is where
Selling of state government companies
goods and
to
services. Huh.
huh?
Right. So,
and
so the private sector can participate in manufacturing or sale of goods and services, which only state used to provide those services and goods.
no, privatization
Sometimes
is selling of state. State has to get out of its
that
manufacturing
service or
units.
good.
Yeah.
Huh. Huh. Okay. हाँ तो
So that is
so indirectly वही
privatization.
हुआ ना whatever I am saying. Private players will enter there if state gets out of it. State will sell to the private players only, right?
Yes, but state, that is the whole point. Ki state will sell it and get out of it.
Hmm.
So Liberalization is a little different. Privatization means state will get out of the business and sell it to
Mhm.
whoever.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
American company also is ready to buy, you should sell it.
And liberalization just removing the trade barriers and making the process more smooth. And globalization is you integrate within other
Your
countries too.
market with global, for companies
Okay.
which are
Yeah.
operating outside. So you will sort of not have that many barriers. Uh, so this globalization thing actually started with the fall of Russian Empire, the Soviet Russia rather than Russian Empire. So 89 Soviet Russia was sort of dissolved, and that's when there was a lot of trade negotiations going on where they thought of the world trade coming together. So there was some agreement, there was an agreement called General Agreements on Tariffs and Trade. It was the GATT agreement, GATT.
Hmm.
And that sort of set the stage. And in 2001, it became, not 2001, later it became World Trade Organization. So it's like to promote free and fair trade amongst all the countries.
Okay. So let's move on to 1991 now. What happened then? P V Narasimha Rao was the prime
Uh,
minister, and Manmohan Singh was the finance minister. And
yeah,
I'm not sure about this, but I have read that Manmohan Singh was the finance minister who was not even a Congress party member before he joined the cabinet, right? Is
yes.
that true?
So Manmohan Singh was chairman of the Reserve Bank of India in the 80s. Before he had moved out before that, 88 or 87. I think he had moved out of Reserve Bank, being a chairman of the Reserve Bank. And the situation in 91 was a culmination of lot of uncertainty that happened over the past 40-50 years in terms of philosophy of our governance. So basically what we were always poor in terms of export. So this Nehruvian model of looking inwards and being self-satisfied with our own production to serve our own people, that sort of was not a good idea at all. And in the early days, it was not very clear because Soviet Russia was apparently successful. So some were infatuated with the Soviet model. There was a lot of communist money bribing all these politicians. So that was also the factor. But by 80s, it was very clear. In fact, if you look at the philosophical inclination of Rajiv Gandhi, you will find that Rajiv Gandhi realized that this model is not working. Indira Gandhi was very staunch, controlling prime minister who would have, sort of a tight grip on the whole country. She was a quasi ruler. But when Rajiv Gandhi came after assassination of Indira Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi understood that this is not the model. Now, I don't know if he understood in his own way or he was promoted as he understood, because that time there was no social media to sort of let them make their own mistakes. So, anyways, but he didn't do anything, unfortunately. And the development in India lagged, terribly. So India was not self-sufficient in many of these things, like oil particularly, and many commodities. Whereas, so we had to import them, necessarily import a lot of stuff, and we did not have enough exports to pay for these imports. So if you earn, let's say, $100, you can buy stuff of $100. But we were importing $120, and we were not even, able to finance or export like $40, because all the things that we are exporting was like just unprocessed food stuff. Okay, so wheat we will export, not even wheat earlier, but we will export some of these things, but nothing else. Like tea was a big export, some pulses were exports, agri products were exported, cotton handlooms were exported, but that's all. That is not the way to earn foreign exchange. And because of that, after sustained depletion of reserves, what happened was we were in dire straits, and we had foreign exchange reserves of about 3 months worth of imports at that time.
Okay.
And if by chance oil prices rose or something, some sort of a shock happened, we would not be able to pay for anything. And that means bankruptcy. That means a run on the currency. That means like what happens in Argentina today or Zimbabwe, something like that would happen in India. Now that was terrible thing to do. So when we did not, after Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated, we did not sort of get any majority government. So it was all messed up coalition with no clear majority. So one party would flip here and there, and whole government would come down. It was an era where Vajpayee government lasted 13 days. That's the era we are talking about.
Mhm.
And then in such a you can imagine in such an uncertain environment, Narsimha Rao was, uh, being the leader, I mean, being the only fellow who could, because nobody wanted this, okay? So everyone wanted everything, these governments to fail, an election to come in, and so that they can arrange for their victory. That's the whole point. And Congress was, you know, uh, since 1975, Congress had given this same thing, same message again and again after Jan Sangh government failed, that there is no alternative to Congress. So they are trying to destabilize the government, everyone, including Congress themselves. So Narsimha Rao was put in place sort of to hold the bag while it sank. Okay,
Mhm.
so he was put in charge of a Titanic
Mhm.
after it hit the iceberg. In a very crude example, and but Narsimha Rao was very smart, and you should read. Everyone should read the book Half Lion. He is a true patriot, and he has all misalignments. Is partly socialist, this that. You can fault him for many things, but he believed in the country. And when he saw the reality, he realized that there is nothing else. There is no alternative. You don't have an option. You have to reform. And in fact, he did not even have a finance minister. Okay, so all the people who knew of the finances were refusing. So when he approached Manmohan Singh also refused, I think, in the initial stage.
Yes, yes.
And Manmohan Singh, the thing is, that Manmohan Singh was former governor of RBI. So he said, that we need we need many things to be done. But he was politically sensitive, so he said, I don't know how can these things be done. So Narsimha Rao said, you don't worry about how it can be done. You tell me what you want to do, I will get it. I will get you that answer. So Narsimha Rao was a master strategist. He maneuvered the government, opposition parties, he maneuvered everyone and gave Manmohan Singh the free hand, and he forced him to sort of liberalize. So Manmohan Singh was, if you see his approach was self-restraint. So he said, "Ki don't do self-restraint. Do what is necessary. Do everything that is necessary." And he tried to get everything. What can maximum can be taken into that process. He carried it, and the beauty was that he survived all 5 years. Nasimha Rao,
Hmm.
despite holding this Titanic. This Titanic did not sink for 5 years, and it was an achievement of sorts. And there were accusations of scandal. Harshad Mehta scandal happened in '92. Everything was going on which was wrong, and it was
I think there were blasts
happening.
also then.
Bombay, yeah, there were blasts, Ram Janmabhoomi, everything that could go wrong, went wrong for Narasimha Rao, but he held on for 5 years and he got these reforms through. And those probably are the only main philosophical reforms that we have done till date. After that, whatever reforms we have done are incremental reforms. No philosophical change has happened since then. So you can imagine the importance of those reforms. Had he not done this, the entire thing which followed in the future would not have happened. So it's a directional change in 91, then it's a scale change. So Vajpayee did a lot of investment in 98 onwards, the GQ and all this. Modi's reform, all incremental, no philosophical change in direction, except in 91. So that's the value of these reforms, and that reform allowed Infosys, Satyams of the world, and Wipros of the world to really take on this technology sector and really become the powerhouses in. I mean, they are not powerhouses by international standards, but they are a leader in service providing in that space, in outsourcing, in sort of entire end-to-end technical solutions, and that happened because of Narsimha Rao. Auto sector, all your Fords, GMs, Korean cars, Hyundai, not Hyundai that time, it was Daewoo, and which one was there? Yeah,
Yeah.
Daewoo was there. Huh?
Fiat.
No, Fiat was already there. Fiat also had come in that time,
And
but everyone came in, and we became a small car hub thanks to those reforms in 91.
okay.
So immensely important reforms.
Hmm. And also, can you tell us something about the IMF thing which happened? Like, what help did we take, like loans or whatever, and why was it so important?
Yeah, so basically we wanted, we did not have money to pay for our imports. Okay, so there are lots of complications in that, because earlier, that is pre 1970s, um, gold was international currency for trade settlements. So if you have gold, you can settle trade in gold, meaning not like your gold, and
Hmm.
but all countries held gold in the US Fort Knox as a reserve, and you can buy and sell gold. And gold was, gold is gold, so you cannot mess with it. And India had a lot of gold in 1947. India still has a lot of gold. India is the largest importer of gold. So as a country, we have a lot of gold. That's not a problem.
No,
But in
one second.
1970s,
You said
huh?
India is the largest importer.
Yeah.
So if we have a lot of gold, then why do we import so much?
We love gold. We have been the largest importer of gold for like past maybe 50, 100 years. I don't know how many. We have always imported gold. We always, buy and keep gold. And all the gold that we keep is kept in, lockers. So we have lots of gold. Okay. So every year we import like something like 600-700 tons of gold.
Okay,
So it's like,
we'll have this economic discussion later on gold. But
yeah.
just
So
curious
anyway,
because
so
yeah,
yeah. So 1970s you could work with gold, but in 1970s the US dollar became the de facto currency of the global trade, because dollar did not. So basically, you use dollar for trade, and dollar was backed by gold. So you had gold means you had dollar. It was like, say, simple. Dollar was convertible into gold. But in 1972, 72, or I think 73, in 1970s, dollar was delinked from gold. So this gold standard went into, they removed the gold standard, and now you needed dollars. Now you have to earn dollars. You can't have gold. I mean, you can give gold, but just having gold doesn't suffice. You need to have gold was also priced in dollars. So gold price would also fluctuate, and you needed dollars, and you have to buy dollars. And if you are a nation and you want to buy suddenly $1 trillion, or not trillion, that time we were not, but $1 billion, then the price would it would get affected, and that was a big risk. So dollars were in big demand, and you have to earn dollars, and we had no method to earn dollars. So who will give us loan in dollars? So IMF was that authority. Now IMF, if you see, when the United Nations was formed, IMF was formed as a sort of a global central bank. So you can take loans. The countries can take loans from IMF. So that was the principle. Now the India wanted a loan from IMF, which IMF said, "Yeah, I will give you, provided you do 50 things." And we were okay with doing 30 things. We were not okay with doing the other 20 things. So IMF said, "Ki, we will not give you the money." So I said, "Ki, we will give gold as a collateral." So that was a way to sort of circumvent peace as a negotiation. So we flew down some, a lot of gold from India as a collateral, and we got that loan. And Yashwant Sinha actually got that loan, and the reforms were something that we had negotiated. We will undertake
So who was
for.
Yashwant Sinha then?
Yashwant Sinha was the finance minister when just before.
Acha, Manmohan was not there.
Manmohan Singh came after. So this Yashwant Sinha
Okay,
business did not
initiated.
last. Yeah. So he had to get the loan, and the loan came with a condition that you will reform. So that reform had to be done by Manmohan Singh.
Okay, okay.
So that was the negotiation. So in effect, Manmohan Singh was required to do 50 things, of which 20 we didn't want to do. So that's where the whole game lay. Or 30 things now he had to do, but he had to do, and that was all the things that he did, and we had to sort of get everything opened up. So that those were the reforms, and that was basically they were trying to move us into capitalism instead of socialism. The US and IMF, because IMF is like a proxy US and Europe. European bank, West European bank. So they were forcing us to become part of their system, and that's what we did.
Yeah, so it was even better for us too, right? Like it was kind of a win-win, I guess.
See, part of that was win-win, but part of the things that they wanted no barriers. Okay, the kind of changes that they expected of us was very different. So we retained some freedom to exercise some of these things. Like, for example, full rupee convertibility we did not agree to. We agreed to a partial convertibility, currency convertibility. Now that helped us a lot because currency fluctuations really damaged a lot of countries, whereas we were fairly, we could manage effectively. Secondly, a lot of our policy remained independent, a monetary policy, because of some of these buffers that we did not agree to, and they continued to be a buffer for us. So that helped us actually. So
Okay.
otherwise, if we would have been completely liberal, let me give a counterfactual thing. Like in '97, there was a big Asian currency crisis. Okay, so we would have been something similar. We would have been completely vulnerable to currency crisis of 1997. But because we had a little more sense and we did not agree to all the conditions, we probably saved ourselves from all this heartburn.
So now, considering the current situation, so economic reforms is very important now due to the pandemic and all. So what reforms we need now to reach
Actually,
where
that
we are
is
planning to?
Yeah, actually, that is the very important, point of discussion, because, like I said, in '91, that was a philosophical change in the direction of our economy. But since 91, what happened, like after Narsimha Rao left, actually there was another coalition governments trying to get power, and all those failed again. Now there also there was no further reform. There was again a big black hole, but we sustained ourselves based on the 91 reform. The real So basically, you see, if you have reformed, you also need to complete the process. Like you need to invest a lot. So it's fine ki, you are allowed now to run in global competitions, but you don't have trainers, you don't have, the strength, you don't have the physiotherapists or personal trainers or coaches and tracks and stuff, then you will not compete and you will not win any medal in the international competitions. So you have to invest in all those also. So we did not invest in all those. So that only happened when Vajpayee came. And Vajpayee came and he invested in the Golden Quadrilateral and ports and all. But then his government also went away. Then Manmohan Singh came as a prime minister, but he did not do much. He did some, but not much. In fact, when his government was in party, in coalition with the communists, they actually did better reform than when they came on their own in the second term. They did not do any reform. Modi did a lot of these reforms, but now he has a full majority. He has to change the direction, the philosophical direction of the economy. And there are two main things. Like even though we have liberalized, our government structure still has that socialist mindset. So if you go to the government, so basically there are two philosophies. Let's say one is you can do anything except what government says cannot be done. Okay. And second is you cannot do anything unless government says it's okay. Okay, these are two philosophies. Okay, so our government is still in that mindset. Okay, how can you suppose tomorrow you start wearing red t-shirt? Government says, how can you wear a red t-shirt
Without informing.
without informing? Where is the permission? Show me. They are, basically that's the premise of their mindset. Whereas the world is moving in, or we have to move in such a manner that you decide, you tell us. So what these government officers do is that they don't share any information. So for example, if you say, you want to start a hospital, or let's say restaurant, you want to put up a vada pav gadi. Simple. You can cook vada pav and sell. Okay. But the minute you sell, they will ask, they can confiscate your stuff because you don't have any license.
Yeah.
So, okay, tell me, if I want to start a vada pav curry, tell me what are the 15 license that you want me to get. Now 15, okay, so they have liberalized to this extent, they now tell you will need 15 license. Okay. But if you go and see what is in that license, they will say, we want this domicile certificate of your grandfather. So what is the domicile certificate of your grandfather? He was born in 1895 and he died in 1970. He did not even have any certificate of domicile, whatever. How will I get? Then you get land records of that. You get letter from the collector from where he was. And all these kinds of hurdles. There was incidentally one blog post which said that he had to run, the person who wanted to start a factory had to go to get some 35 permissions. Okay. And those 35 permissions, he was made to run pillar to post to get that permission. 2 years he spent. So he finally wrote the blog post. Then the secretary contacted him, union secretary or state secretary, I don't know. And he said that these permissions are supposed to be taken by the ministry, not by you. Okay. And they have to be completed within 30 days or 90 days, I don't remember. But he was made to run 3 years or 2 years for permissions. So this is the mindset that we have. That whole mindset has to go. So one of the things that we encouraged or we tried to get the government to do was that you have a database of drivers, you have the database of cars. Okay, why don't you, and you have the database of ownership. Oh, okay, everything is connected by Aadhaar. So why don't you get a mechanism where all these things are connected? So every car which comes in automatically generates that detail, that whatever the car number is tagged to a owner, and the owner gets papers, and everything gets smoothly flows through the system, so that when your car goes to Assam, he just has to flash that barcode or whatever you want to call code you want to flash, and then they know that this car belongs to this person and this person is that person
Hmm.
who is saying he is. Or let's say you give me your car and I am driving in Assam. Okay, so I show him that this is car of Prasanna Naidu and I am the authorized driver. I am driving this. So he knows that Prasanna Naidu has given me permission to drive this car. Back end, he doesn't need to do anything.
Hmm.
Now he will go to the police station. You will, so that also they did not approve. Anyways, they won't approve if we give suggestions like that. But now they are doing it. In fact, so a national ration card. So same thing about ration card. You have a ration card. You have another ration card. You have third ration card. Why? Because they are secretly made. You have a connection, water connection from your municipality. You have another side connection to your municipality. There are two connections, but you have charged once. All these things should go away. But this is how they control the system. And that philosophical change is again required. In fact, we wrote a blog post on this, that and it is more important to do these kinds of things after COVID. Our young people, they should be able to do whatever business they want. Now, you must have read that Bangladesh GDP is higher than India per capita terms.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that is because Bangladesh is not interfering in their citizens working and finding these opportunities globally.
Hmm.
Why can't Bengal, which is next to it, do the same thing? I mean, what different work culture are the Bangladeshis bringing to the table as compared to Bengalis from next door, West Bengal?
Right.
There's nothing. It's basically your approach, because setting up a manufacturing unit or a clothing unit in Bengal is so difficult that you would rather set it up in Bangladesh. If you want, they are manufacturing jeans. They are not even manufacturing. They are just, stitching up jeans and sending them back. The zips come from China. The buttons and zips comes from China. The denim comes from India. They sit in Bangladesh. They stitch them up. They pack them in boxes and ship them off across the world. And they are making more money than us. So this is what another thing. What happens is, like, for example, first, if you get to ports, if you have, like, if you start a manufacturing units manufacturing TVs. Let's say you manufacture 100,000 TVs a month. Okay, you can't sell them because ports, the container will go only after 30 days. There's congestion in ports. So what is the use? All these things need to be changed. So for that, people will do it. But if you allow people to do it, then people will do it. The minute people start doing something, you interfere. So that won't happen. That won't help. So this next phase of reform is basically bureaucratic reform, where bureaucracy should step aside and start serving people, not ruling people. Bureaucrats are ruling people. If you go, the collector will say, ki, recently we went for a client, not recently, 2 years back, because since COVID we are stuck at home. But before COVID lockdown, the client was called because their lands were being acquired. So collector called all of them. Okay. And he said, ki, this is land acquisition under agreement, mutual understanding, land acquisition by mutual agreement. You agree to this price and we will acquire your land. I said, how is that mutual agreement? Mutual agreement means you will make an offer, I will accept or I will reject.
Yeah.
They say, no, you cannot reject. You have to accept this price and then I will acquire your land. How is this land acquisition by mutual agreement? So we gave a letter, we don't accept your offer. Please acquire our land under Land Acquisition Act. So he made us wait for 8 hours.
Hmm.
For acquiring our land, my client's land, he is asking us to wait. He is the ruler because he is the king, right, of the district. That's the mindset.
Right.
So this mindset has to go away. The bureaucracy should start serving people. And this is what happens, again, to come uh, in taxes. It's horrendous. Okay. I mean, it's a simple thing to calculate taxes. Fourth standard fellow should be able to calculate his taxes in that, I don't know, in your times, in our times, there was like 13% tax is the rate. So what is if we earn 500 rupees, calculate. And in fourth standard maths, we used to be asked these kinds of questions. That exactly is the nature of calculation required for taxes. Now here, how many cattle you own? Why do you need to know how many race horses do you own? I don't own race horses. Okay.
Yeah.
Then earlier they had 1 in 6. I'm telling you before 92. If you have a telephone, you need to file extra tax. You know that thing. If you have a bank locker, you have to file. If you have something else, you have to be in foreign country, you have to find one more additional thing. Why? Make it simple so that everyone can file taxes and then they will trap you. So everywhere it's like a trap is being laid for citizens. So who will fall into such traps? Citizens said, we are not doing business. You give us jobs. And they can't give us jobs. And now this has become the crux because now we have very young population who is extremely talented, who has seen the world through internet, social media. They know everything. How roads are now. No one says, no one is, because we did not know how bad roads were in India in 1960s and 70s. By 1990s, we saw globally what is the status, and we wanted airports like that, roads like that. Now people know what kind of things are happening in the world. We want that now, and government is trying to give employment to people. You don't need to give employment to people. You just need to get out of the way. People will find the way to get employed themselves. If you stop the people, then people want your employment. If you get out of the way, people will run away and then you will be catching up. So this whole philosophical reform is what is next, and it's very difficult because it has lots of complications. How will you reform the bureaucracy? In Georgia, in one night, because there was so much corruption that Georgia, I'm talking about the European country, Georgia.
Okay.
So the party who was running for government, he said, we'll clean up the corruption. They were ranked, I think, 180 or 190 on corruption index, the worst categories, bottom, like bottom, like 220 countries and 180 is their number. So when that fellow got elected, so he said, on one fine night, from tomorrow, no traffic police will be allowed. All are fired. I'm not joking. They did that.
Okay.
All traffic police fired. So people said there will be chaos. People celebrated like anything. And there was no chaos, no mismanagement because traffic police are the most corrupt. He said, I'm firing all of them. And then because this worked so well, he said, I'm firing all police. He fired all police. The result is from 180, that corruption index where they were, then they came to 50 or something. They are now ranked 50. He cleaned up. He said, I'm not listening to any corrupt fellow. Go home and stay home. I'll give you full salary. And this is what, in fact, Bombay High Court, one case I remember, one fellow was saying, "Ki, please allow me to start work." So he said, "Ki, but you're getting full salary. You're staying at home and getting full salary. What is your rush?" Like, no, but I want to work. It's okay, there's no reason for, I'm not able to understand. Is it, what is your difficulty? The judge was asking him. You have full salary, you don't have to work.
Yeah.
What is your problem?
Because I earn double the salary when I work.
Exactly. So he is saying, you explain to me what is your difficulty, what was your salary, whatever, 500 rupees. I'm giving you full 500 rupees. I'm passing this order. He said, no, but I don't want that 500 rupees, but you allow me to work. I want to serve the country. He said, you don't want to serve the country. I know that. You stay home and take this 500.
But
So this is the reform that is required.
Yeah.
No, it is required, and police needs to be reformed. Law and order, like we have always been saying, and you have also been advocating on budding lawyers.
Yeah.
Law and order is the most important reform. It's the first reform. And bureaucracy, next. If you clean that up, people will be obliged to Modi forever. If he can clean up the, bureaucracy and police.
No, I forget Modi. No political party will take these extreme steps because they want to be in power. Simple. So
correct, and that is what people are afraid of. But I'm telling you, Adityanath is doing. Yogi Adityanath is doing. I'm watching what he's doing on corruption, and his control of bureaucracy is amazing. So I'm hoping that, like, the instance of corruption which I hear from UP is reduced drastically. So I think he knows how to handle these stuff. Modi, I don't know why he's so reluctant, but I mean, these bureaucrats, the whole bureaucracy needs. The thing is that top level bureaucracy has improved. Okay, so it's not that it's not improved. The point is that they don't have the talent.
okay.
And the lower rung bureaucracy is making things difficult. They are putting up hurdles so that his whatever policy schemes don't work. So, like in demonetization, the demonetization became painful because these bank managers started making these side deals to swap notes, the black notes, not the regular notes. And it's my suspicion that RBI has received more notes than the stated currency in the system. This is my suspicion. That's why they have not yet disclosed. They are saying that 98.99%, 99.5% notes have been returned. It's not possible that 99.5% notes have been returned. I'm telling you that more than 100% have been returned, and they are not able to reconcile how we printed 100 notes, we got 120 notes, and still there are so many notes which are destroyed. So they are not able to understand, but they can't say it. That's the whole point. So this thing has to go. A lot of reform is required, and I mean, it's difficult. It's going to be difficult for Modi to do these reforms.
Yeah. Okay, so on that note, let's end this episode. And there's a quiz. There's a puzzle for you guys who are listening. So please tell us and tweet us how we can get 120 notes out of 100 notes, like if 100 notes are in circulation. So please tweet us your answers. And also, if you want to check out our other episodes, please listen to the other episodes. It's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and also on YouTube. And we also have started a Marathi channel, RightVIEWS Maharashtra. So do check it out too. Thank you.
Thank you.